Hello and welcome to Beyond Markets, where we bring you up to speed on development outcomes in Africa. I'm Kenneth Igbomor, and thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Coming up on today's show, we'll look at how the coronavirus pandemic presents an opportunity for better ties between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. You can join the conversations and let us know what you think. The hashtag to use is Beyond Markets. You can also hit me up at Kenneth Igbomor. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has been dealing a severe blow on global economies, from oil price shocks to supply chain disruptions, leaving global investment flows at subpar levels. Sustaining key partnerships at a time like this will definitely go a long way to cushion the impact of the pandemic on countries. At a virtual ministerial meeting of the UK and Nigeria Economic Development Forum, the United Kingdom and Nigeria pledged to keep the flow of bilateral trade and maintain existing investments through the crisis. And I have with me Harriet Thomson. She's the British Deputy High Commissioner in Nigeria. She joins me now for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Ma. And I'd like to start with understanding what the pledges made to keep the flow of trade and maintain existing investments between Nigeria and the United Kingdom means for both countries to weather through the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important for us to be thinking about these issues right now. Some of the issues that we've been working on together between the UK and Nigeria to try to improve the business environment in Nigeria, to try to make it easier for companies to succeed in Nigeria, are long-term issues. But at the moment, as we see that steps in Nigeria, right across the world, that have been taken by governments to stem the spread of the virus are having huge impacts on companies. It's so important for us to protect and support those companies, because within those companies, that's jobs, that's livelihoods that we're talking about. If the companies go under, we lose the jobs and families aren't able to support themselves. So that's why this work is so very important right now.
All right, but when you look at how trade between Nigeria and the United Kingdom, I'm trying to understand the level of support we're seeing from the UK government when in regards to, looking at the standards of exports and how the level of commitment we're seeing to reform the export market in Nigeria as well.
Yeah, it's a particularly important point, I think, Kenneth, as we think about the impact that the drop in the oil price has had on Nigeria, particularly at this time. I think the importance of economic diversification is really brought home to us. And there we have been working with the Standards Organization of Nigeria. We've been working with NAFDAC for some time now in partnership to try to boost their ability to support companies who are exporting non-oil products to raise their standards so that they're better able to find those export markets. We're also working with SMEs in the non-oil sectors, again, to help them to raise their standards. So it's with the companies themselves and with the regulatory authorities that we're doing some of that work. The tech sector is a great example where Nigeria is going from strength to strength, where the importance of that sector is really brought home to us in how we're having to live our lives at the moment. So working with Nigerian government at federal and at state level, for example, to improve infrastructure, to understand the impact of digitally excluded communities, to help some of those tech companies to pivot into COVID relevant areas. It's another example of how we're trying to support companies to export and to diversify away from oil-based goods.
When you look at the delay in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, yes, it was a blow on one hand, but I'm trying to look at how it could be an opportunity for countries to better prepare for the implementation when it comes up next year.
Yeah, so we're doing a piece of work actually at the moment to understand how coronavirus is impacting on the companies and what, therefore, we need to take account of in Nigeria as we get ready to implement the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. With the disruption of traditional supply chains, traditional supply routes, there are opportunities for different countries to get involved in sectors that perhaps they haven't been so much in recently. So we're working with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria to understand how factories in Nigeria could pivot towards developing, creating some of those COVID relevant goods that are so needed at the moment, rather than having to import them. And I think that flexibility is something that will stand Nigeria in good stead as the economy, both in Nigeria and globally, recovers. So being able to produce the things that are needed right across the world and to be able to take advantage of things like the Continental Free Trade Agreement as implementation approaches.
Well, no doubt the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted investment decisions this year, but I would like to look at the recent UK-Africa Investment Summit and try to understand better how the pandemic has impacted the commitments that are made, or how the partnerships are still forging ahead despite the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, the African Investment Summit feels like a long time ago now, but the level of interest that we had in British companies in finding out more about the opportunities that are on offer in Nigeria, and then actually making those connections so that they can further the relationships and really make moves towards either doing more business here or setting up in business in Nigeria for the first time. Now, obviously, the current economic situation globally has put quite a lot of that activity on hold, but we remain in touch with those companies who are interested. And I think that contact at the moment between government and the private sector is absolutely critical. It's one of the most important things that I think as governments we can be doing right now. So it was great a few weeks ago to meet with the Honourable Minister Adebayo and some of our largest investors in Nigeria, for him and for us to hear directly about the issues that are facing those companies at the moment and how governments can support companies to retain investment, which is as important as attracting new investment right now. But the attraction of new investment matters too, and the competitiveness of Nigeria is so important, as investment on a global scale is even more scarce than it has been in recent years. So it's been really encouraging to see Nigerian government's willingness to take some of the bold steps that will make the conditions in Nigeria better for businesses, and so make Nigeria more likely to attract the investment that it needs as we recover from the global economic crisis that's been caused by the health crisis of the coronavirus pandemic.
Trying to understand the level of the kind of sentiments UK investors are having looking at Nigeria now as an investment destination and the opportunity that Nigeria presents.
So what British investors want to see is the opportunity for large-scale investments over a long period of time, as well as looking at what opportunities there might be in the short term created by some of the changes that we've seen as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And Nigeria certainly represents those. As I mentioned, it's been super to see the Nigerian government's willingness to take the bold decisions that will create the better business environment. So, for example, removing the fuel price subsidy, tackling the power sector, looking at customs regulations and the forex regime. All of these are issues that have been around for quite some time. But right now, the federal government, state governments have shown that they're willing to really look at those because they recognise that particularly now, they really need to work hard to attract investment and to retain investment. So we're working as the British government here in Nigeria to support those efforts that will see Nigeria, as they emerge from the impact of coronavirus, continue to move up the World Bank's ease of doing business rankings. And it's that sort of movement, it's those steps, it's that bold, decisive action that companies will be looking for as they think about where next, as the world begins to look forward after coronavirus.
Looking at how things are playing out, though, I'm trying to understand the kind of recommendations you're giving to the government regarding certain areas that make business run smoothly, especially around power, like you rightly mentioned. I don't know if there's any area of opportunity for collaboration between the Nigerian government and the UK government on making power better, especially for businesses.
Yeah, so power sector reform is one of the key areas that we're working with the Nigerian government on, and have been again for many years actually. It's one of the messages that came out most strongly when our large investors into Nigeria spoke with the Honourable Minister Adebayo, alongside issues like the forex regime, around customs reform. And these are again areas where we've been working with the Nigerian government and will continue to provide technical assistance into those parts of government who have a role to play, as well as looking at how the private sector can contribute. So part of it's around dialogue and understanding the issues and the impact of these issues on private sector. But then there's the technical assistance, there's a programmatic reform. So on things like power sector reform, we've got advisors embedded with various parts of the administration who are working towards that. We're on the boards of the World Bank and the IMF, so working with them them alongside other international partners to chart a way through those really big and complex issues. So it will take time, and these aren't issues that have come about because of coronavirus, but the fact of coronavirus and the impact of steps that governments right across the world have taken to stem the spread of the virus makes it even more important that we work now to tackle these issues, to reduce costs on businesses, such that coming out of coronavirus, we're able to work towards a faster recovery.
Security challenges are something we see quite often, and they've become recurring in recent times. But I'd also like to know how the British government also is offering assistance to Nigeria with regards to tackling the security challenges that we're facing, especially in the region.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning it. It's one of the other issues that British companies think about when they think about whether they want to come to Nigeria, frankly, but it's obviously important for far more reasons beyond that. We've been working for a number of years very closely with the federal government, with state level governments, with the security services and the armed forces, as well as the humanitarian agencies, to support the federal government's efforts to stem the conflict in the northeast of Nigeria. And even as we pivot a huge amount of our programme funding at the moment into efforts to support the Nigerian government through coronavirus, we're maintaining that spend in the northeast to try to boost security, to tackle the long-term drivers of the insecurity, but also to support the people who are affected by the insecurity. So people in IDP camps, host communities, people who have been traumatised by the events up there in the northeast. That continues despite the pressures of coronavirus, and indeed it's been affected by coronavirus. So now, as well, in IDP camps, you have the additional threat of the spread of this virus. So we have introduced to that programme activity measures around public health, around prevention, around how to support people who may be start to develop the symptoms of coronavirus. We're also looking at the violence that we've seen across the Middle Belt and other parts of Nigeria over recent years, started by resource scarcity, particularly between settled farmers and herders. We're looking at how coronavirus is impacting on that, but more broadly also thinking about things like climate change. And I think people will be aware that next year now, the UK will be hosting the International Climate Change Conference of the Parties, where we'll be really looking to increase countries' ambitions on climate change, which should help to reduce that pressure on natural resources, which is one of the driving factors of that conflict through the Middle Belt.
All right, there's still quite a lot to cover with Harriet Thomson, the British Deputy High Commissioner in Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll find out how the COVID-19 pandemic presents an opportunity for Nigeria and British relations to grow tighter. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Beyond Markets. If you're just joining us, Harriet Thomson is the British Deputy High Commissioner in Nigeria, and she joins me now as we look at how to improve the ties between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. And Harriet, I would like to look at the COVID-19 pandemic and how it presents an opportunity for stronger ties between Nigeria and the United Kingdom.
Thanks for the question. It's a good one. I think in any time of crisis, there are always the opportunities as well as the risks. And I mentioned briefly earlier the fact of disrupted supply chains across the world, the fact of the drop in oil prices. These things have prompted governments to look differently at things. So we've already seen in Nigeria the federal government's decision to take some really bold steps that previously it hadn't been willing to do. Those are particularly important now. They will support a longer term, they will support a stronger recovery in the longer term. And that's why the UK government is working so closely to provide support to the federal government as it implements some really important changes, but some very complex policy changes. So that technical assistance is vital. Diversification of the economy is something where, again, we've been working closely for a number of years, but particularly because of the impact of the drop in the oil price, it becomes important now. So all of that work that we've been putting in to support standards through the agencies, through the companies who could be exporting more non-oil products, that work becomes particularly important. The relationships that we've built up through the Nigeria Investment Showcase that we held in November, through the UK Africa Investment Summit that we held in January, through the regular meetings of our ministers, through the Economic Development Forum, and now the public-private dialogue that we introduced a couple of weeks ago with Honourable Minister Adebayo. These are all examples where the dialogue between our private sector and our governments are meaning that we can work together as we seek to support Nigeria in seizing the opportunities that are emerging from the crisis.
Let's look at how the COVID-19 pandemic, and the level of international collaborations that we need at this time for countries to go out, because we understand that it's a global pandemic. Every country has been affected, and get everybody coming together at this time and collaborating to get out of this shock, and how important that is.
Yeah, absolutely critical. As you say, this is perhaps the first episode of this kind that there's been in many of our lifetimes where the whole world is affected. It's completely unprecedented. And so we're all having to learn from each other. We're all looking at how other governments have responded and trying to learn the lessons from those experiences as we try to deal with these crises in our own countries. And I think particularly in Nigeria at the moment, as we're seeing the lockdowns relaxed, we're seeing case numbers increase, but at the same time, we're recognizing the importance of maintaining the economy, supporting the private sector, protecting jobs, protecting livelihoods. We're seeing Nigeria tread that line between the health impacts of coronavirus and the economic impacts of coronavirus. It's a dilemma that the British government obviously is facing too, in the same way that governments right across the world are. And the answer is going to be different in different countries, but the fact remains that we can, by talking with each other, by understanding each other's experiences, we can learn from each other and hopefully limit the impact both on the health side and on the economic side in countries right across the world. It really brings to the fore for me the importance of global cooperation, of organisations like the World Health Organization, the UN, but more broadly as well, UNESCO, the broader United Nations family.
But this pandemic is coming just a decade to the deadline set for the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you look at how countries like Nigeria over the years have been trying to make progress on different targets or goals for the SDGs, I'd like you to speak to the importance of not losing that progress that we've made in the face of this pandemic.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential. And, I remember talking with people about the SDGs towards the end of last year, before we'd heard about coronavirus in this part of the world. And a real mix of views between some people determinedly optimistic about our chances of meeting the SDGs by 2030 and others already feeling quite pessimistic. So obviously the impacts in both health terms but also economic terms of coronavirus has been enormous as we move towards 2030. So it will take an absolutely concerted effort by countries right across the world if we're able to make up the gap that coronavirus has caused, but then also accelerate progress towards the SDGs in the way that we would have done even if coronavirus hadn't hit. So we've got huge work to do, but I think the coming together of members of the international community to tackle coronavirus gives us a good platform from which to make that progress that we need to. It's only by coming together that we could possibly have met the SDGs by 2030. So I'm glad that that international cooperation has been strengthened in some ways by coronavirus. It's a bit of a reminder of how important it is for us to act together, for us to act as a global community.
Still looking at acting together though, yes, we've seen the amount of stress this pandemic has placed on the health systems here in Nigeria. We understand that it's not happening easier in many other places as well. But looking at the health on one hand, we're dealing with trying to protect lives, and on the other hand, we're also dealing with trying to protect livelihoods as well. But I'd like to know how the British government is working with Nigeria, first on the health systems, and securing that and making sure that it's resilient enough for future shocks as well, and also helping to protect livelihoods as well, looking at how we need to protect jobs at this time.
So, I mean, obviously, it's a global health crisis on a scale that's been unprecedented in my lifetime, certainly, and many of us, I think. And the nature of this virus means that only by halting its spread in all countries can we ensure that any country can be safe. And that's why globally, the UK has so far pledged £764 million of UK aid to end this pandemic as quickly as possible. We've become the biggest donor towards the efforts to develop a vaccine for coronavirus, having pledged up to £388 million to support new vaccines, tests and treatments for coronavirus. But right here in Nigeria, we're working with the health system to support essential health services and to protect health workers. We've pivoted a large health programme, £19.3 million, it's called LAFIA, to enable it to provide direct support for coronavirus alongside WASH interventions, malaria, nutrition, and state service level delivery. We're also supporting infrastructure, which is crucial at the moment. So supporting isolation centres, but things like unlocking road maintenance as well, so that we can get the supplies to where they're needed as efficiently as possible. I mentioned briefly our work in the northeast of the country, hit by the Boko Haram crisis. And there we're working with people in IDP camps to get out the messages about prevention of the spread of the virus, also to 3 million rural farmers in that part of the world about sanitation practices to prevent the spread of the virus. We're providing support to the Presidential Task Force, of course, and that includes on strategic communications to get those messages out about coronavirus, how to prevent the spread, but then how to care for people safely in a home setting when they develop the symptoms for coronavirus. Obviously, the impact of coronavirus goes beyond health, and we've been talking a bit about that, the importance of protecting jobs, of protecting livelihoods, and that's where the private sector particularly plays such an important part. So these steps that the government has taken to reduce costs for the private sector, to improve the doing business environment here in Nigeria, that's why that is so important at the moment as well, alongside all of the interventions in health directly.
All right, but looking at how it's impacting startups and businesses as well, I understand that the UK Nigeria Tech Hub recently concluded a survey, and I'd like to know what the findings were and how you're looking to support entrepreneurs in that area.
Yeah, so I mean, the key findings of the survey, I think, won't come as a surprise to people, in that it's the low revenues and the lack of availability of capital for those businesses. Those are the two key factors that are affecting them. So what we're doing now is arranging a series of workshops, of masterclasses that are getting into some of the issues that they've raised in a bit more depth, and are helping them to understand how they can address those issues, but also potentially how they can pivot their businesses. So, for example, we're working with a number of mental health service providers, teaming those up with some of the online digital companies, SMEs, to support the online provision of mental health services. We're supporting efforts to boost people's awareness of IT security, so that as we do more of our business, but also conduct more of our lives online, people are aware of the steps that they need to take in order to keep themselves safe. We are working, I mentioned, through the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. So that's taking the kind of concrete, the physical world, production of goods, and working out how we can pivot that towards supporting Nigerian companies to develop more of the products that we need in Nigeria to help stem the spread of coronavirus. So it's the online work and it's the kind of the physical world, I suppose, working out how in both of those different environments, companies using the equipment they've got, using the know-how that they've got, can adapt to and survive, do well in the current economic circumstances.
Thank you so much for your time. Definitely looking at how Nigeria and the United Kingdom can build stronger ties and use the COVID-19 pandemic as an opportunity to foster better trade in Nigeria, between Nigeria and the UK. I've been speaking to Harriet Thomson. She's the British Deputy Commissioner in Nigeria, and definitely we'll be looking at how the COVID-19 pandemic, has been affecting Nigeria and the United Kingdom, and definitely how both countries can come out better at the end of this. And that's it on Beyond Markets. And thank you so much for joining us for today's show. Remember, you can catch the show at 5 p.m. West Africa time daily and have access to all episodes of Beyond Markets on our website. That's at cnbcafrica.com. You can also hit me up at Kenneth and let me know what you think about the topics we discussed, and definitely get back to you and definitely have a good conversation. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.